My name is Ken McNeilly, and I'm a single gay dad. For me, it was about a decade of trying before I became a parent, and that decade involved an adoption home study, a course for would-be gay parents, 5 gestational surrogates, 7 embryo transfers, 3 egg donors, a couple of different countries. And finally, in 2016, I became a parent. I actually became a parent to twins. My son and my daughter were born, and less than 4 weeks later, due to the fact that they were premature and had underdeveloped immune systems, my daughter acquired an infection in hospital, and she passed away when she was 27 days old. And that was a really rough start to becoming a parent after having tried for a decade. And so I had that, experience of coming home to Canada with 1 child instead of 2, the experience of having to take down one of the 2 cribs that I'd assembled in their bedroom. I was already at a point where I needed to wrestle with so many of the emotions that came along with that grief. And then to get this news from the Canadian government, a government that I naively thought was supportive of the queer community in Canada, really stopped me in my tracks and was rattling. There are still obstacles in the way, certainly, that slow things down for members of the LGBTQ community that want to become parents. I wouldn't necessarily say that the current beef that I have with the Canadian government was an obstacle to me becoming a parent. The obstacles came after I was a parent. It was in 2016 that my accountant advised me to submit my medical expenses from the 2015 tax year. And so I did, believing that I was eligible for the medical expenses tax credit, one of the entitlements that's part of the Income Tax Act. And so I got a hefty refund check in spring of 2016 because I had a lot of medical expenses in 2015, and later in the fall of 2016, the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, reassessed my file, clawed back those entitlements, and demanded that I repay the refund check.
Thank you so much, Ken, for being here. Can you walk us through this law for some people who may be unfamiliar with this? You say this creates unfair and unnecessary barriers for LGBTQ Canadians who want to start families.
Sure. I've had to become a bit of an expert by necessity in the Income Tax Act of Canada, and the definition of patient that they allow for anyone submitting medical expenses is quite narrow and doesn't perhaps imagine the way people would one day become parents.
It all centers around their definition, or the income tax's definition of patient, which basically says that if the expenses aren't mine, or my spouse's, or my common law spouse's, or my dependents, then I can't submit them. And so in my case, I needed the help of an egg donor. I needed the help of a gestational surrogate. They're not members of my family. And so the Income Tax Act, as a strict interpretation of the word patient, says even though I was the payer of those expenses, I cannot make that claim. And so it's discriminatory. It's a tax entitlement that applies to some, but that won't apply to people that need the help of an egg donor, a sperm donor, or a surrogate. The amount that they're asking me to repay is $13,500. And of course, this is now years later. This battle's ongoing. And so if I do lose the court challenge that I've launched in the Tax Court of Canada, I'd also likely be expected to pay that back with interest. And so I'd be somewhere north of $20,000 at this point.
It's towards the end of 2016 that I knew that this was going to have to be a battle, won through the Tax Court of Canada, or at least I thought the whole thing was going to have to go through the Tax Court of Canada. And so just to illustrate, here are all the things that the lawyers for the CRA have sent me at various times.
I fought that on my own from 2016 until 2020. which was frustrating and exhausting and emotionally draining. And in December of 2020, I had success reaching out to a lawyer by the name of Adam Goldenberg with McCarthy Titro, and he agreed to take my case pro bono. And so from 2020 until 2024, that case has been ongoing. And just recently in December 2023 and January and February of 2024, I had 11 days in court arguing against lawyers representing the Attorney General of Canada. And now it'll be somewhere up to a year before we get the verdict from the judge in that case. With the help of McCarthy Titro, I also have pro bono representation from a strategy firm, Crestview Strategies, and they helped me write a budget proposal and helped me line up meetings with some federal cabinet ministers or policy advisors. And I had one meeting with senior policy advisor to Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, where I told my story. And I then submitted a budget proposal. And so in budget 2022, there was a significant change that basically going forward allows for expenses related to egg donation, sperm donation, and surrogacy to be eligible for the medical expense tax credit. But there are still three problems. The first problem for me was that it's not retroactive, so it doesn't apply to my 2015 tax filing. It is something that they will only recognize if the expenses happen in Canada, and I became a parent in Nepal. And then the third problem is that a future government could take that out of the budget because it hasn't actually amended the Income Tax Act, and so I don't feel like it's permanent enough to really celebrate this as a win. I was in an elementary school once and saw a quote painted on a wall, and it's a quote by Carol Burnett, who's more known for being funny than being profound, but the quote really spoke to me at a time when I was at a crossroads trying to figure out if I would have another child after having experienced loss. And the quote is this: "If you have a dream, you've got to grab hold and never let go." And that for me became a really clear moment of just identifying that this was a vision that I had for my family. Me with more than one child in my house and their friends making all kinds of messes and noises and a house full of laughter. That's what I wanted. That's what I envisioned. And it's a dream that I'm happy that I didn't let go of.